Welcome back. This is going to be a different series to what I've been doing up to now. I'm calling it Making It Unreal with Unity. So we are going to be doing all shader related stuff. So I was thinking, I've been watching a lot of other videos and I've kind of felt like there are some really nice shader tutorials for Unity out there, but just there isn't enough. So I wanted to get back in touch with my artistic side and my creative side, so I thought I would create a shader series on things you can do. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do and then we'll jump straight into it. So we have a little character that when he moves around, the blocks underneath rise up, and there's a little bit of a color change where he stands. So this is kind of a Tron-esque pin table, I guess you could call it. So if we just, while we're playing it, let me just show you what you can do with the shader itself. We have a radius, so we can make it bigger or smaller. We also have a softness, so we can make it either blend more, create a softer curve, or make it a bit of a harder one. So if we were to put this directly at 1, you would notice that we just now have blocks that are popping in and out. But if we put this at 0, we get a little bit of a softer result, and then if we go into the negative value with the hardness, something like -1, we have a much softer fall off. And then the radius is how far the effect goes into the world. And then we just have the colors over here, so we could change this to a different color, make that pink, make this green, and we have the effect. And then where the two blend together, you get whatever the result of that color is. That's pretty much it. So let's get started with this. So I just made a package with my camera and my player just for testing so that I can use this. We're going to create a brand new project, talk about what needs to be installed, and let's get started with that. So we're going to just move this off screen here. Let's go to Unity Hub. I'm using the latest version of Unity. If you're wondering, it is 2019.4.7 F1, and we're going to go and create a brand new project using 2019. I'm using 2020, so I'm not going to show you in that in case there's instability in that package. So I'm just going to create a new one using that version. The way I did that was just click on the little down arrow next to new. So if you have multiple versions, you can choose which version of Unity you're going to be using to create this project. I'm just going to start with standard 3D, and then I'm going to add the universal render pipeline. I want to kind of show that I feel that there's a lot of stuff that comes with like using these two packages that I don't really need, to be honest. So we're just going to put this in my work folder. Let's just create a new Unity folder here. You don't have to do this. I'm just trying to keep my files managed. Let's call this Making Things Unreal with Unity. There we go. Just put the year on there. Why not? And we're just going to create it. We're just going to wait. Depending on your speed of your PC and all that kind of stuff, we're waiting. Okay. So all of this was done with Unity assets. I didn't have to go outside of Unity to create the cubes. I just used a Unity cube. I'll show you the little hacky way that I did the Tron outlines. There's nothing special to it. This will only work really for cubes as far as that the line work on the shader. Won't work with anything else. And you'll see when we get to that point what I mean by that. Okay, so here's our scene. We're gonna import the assets. We're gonna get a few errors. So I'm gonna import my custom package. I can share this in the comments. So all it's got is a camera and the player, just the simple movements, inputs using the new input system. I just created a grid generator script, a simple camera follow script, and a simple player script, and then just the usual jazz that you add. So we're gonna get errors here. That's because we don't have the input system or installed. So we're going to go to the package manager, open that up, wait for it to load, continue waiting for it to load. Package manager, I find sometimes it loads everything, sometimes it doesn't. So if there's anyone out there from Unity that's listening or watching this video, it would be really nice to know why. So at the top here, I'm going to search for input, and I'm going to install the input system. because I'm using the new input system for this. You don't have to do this part. This is just for me to get my project up and running so that I have a working project with my little character control I did, just so that we can test the level and move around and that sort of thing. Takes a little bit, so be patient. It's going to ask you if you want to restart Unity because now you have a new input system and it's going to switch over. You're going to say yes. All that's left after this is to reinstall the universal render pipeline. This should, I don't see why this shader shouldn't work in the HD render pipeline. It's just a shader based effect. I am going to be also showing some screen based stuff using Blitz. But that works predominantly in forward rendering with, see, now all our errors are gone. So now all I need to do is just to add that glow and all that kind of fancy jazz. I'm just going to add, hopefully that'll work. Let's try typing that again. My keyboard decided it wanted to type something completely different. Okay, I think there might be a newer version of Universal Render Pipeline. I'm going to see what that, once it's installed, if there is. I think there might be 7.4. I could be wrong, but we'll see right now. I just wanted to do this in the video. I don't want to kind of do any time lapse or cutaways. I want to show you the exact process, how it's, with the potential time it can take on like what I would classify my line as being utterly crap. So you can see, like, if you have a decent internet, this should not take very long because you just need to download the package and install the package. Okay, so we're installing Universal Render Pipeline to get the access to the Shadergraph. So because Universal Render Pipeline or the HD Render Pipeline will have Shadergraph installed automatically with that render pipeline, along with the post-processing and all that stuff. So we'll get all the bells and whistles. Sorry it's taking so long, guys. I did mention that things are slow. Let me just open this up to see if there's a newer version. There is a newer version, so I'm just going to update to 7.4.2 apparently, just to make sure that I have the updated version, that there might have been some bug fixes or issues that have been fixed since the last version release. Okay, so the next stage after we've downloaded this is to create a render pipeline asset, which will then create a forward renderer with it, and then which we will use to just plug that in to make sure everything works. It's saying that it needs to look through your project files and convert them. Cool. Okay, so let's get going. I'm going to just start by slowly, I'm just going to put in a plane for the non-empty game object. I'm going to start by putting a plane just kind of so we can see what we're doing does. Actually, no, we don't need the plane. We don't need the plane. We just need to grab our prefabs, drag those in. You'll see that the material on the player is broken, so we need to go Assets, Edit, Render Pipeline, and go Universal Render Pipeline and just say Upgrade Project Materials, but it will still stay pink. I'll show you why now. I'm just going to create an empty folder in here. Let's just call this Settings. Or just call it URP. There we go. That'll be easier. URP, and here we're going to go and create a new rendering Universal Pipeline asset. And then once you do that, you can give it any name you want. It'll create these two. The top one is where you've got your quality settings for shadows, all that stuff. And the bottom one is where you do all your effects, like adding your render objects, experimental stuff. That is really cool. So we're going to go Edit, Project Settings, go to Graphics, drag in the pipeline asset, and my graphics now thingy is fixed. So we're good to go. Okay, so now that we have this, we are going to create we have a shaders folder because I just created my little orange for my guy. So we have that. We also have the camera, which we can just reposition so we can see what the hell we're looking at. But the code will move the camera where it needs to be when the time comes. There we go. So let's start off by creating a cube in the scene that we can use as our little cube that's going to come up and down. There we go. And we're just going to reposition that cube where we need it. So I'm just going to zero that out. And then I'm going to create an empty so that I can just make sure when I use the script to generate the amount of cubes I want that this is the bottom and not the center of the cube. So I'm just going to create a new empty game object. Also make sure that that is at the center and just call this cube base. And I'm just going to parent this cube to that one and then move the cube up by 0.5. Okay. We're going to create the default straight up shader material so we can just drop it onto here and then we can convert this into a prefab. So I'm going to create a new, go to shader at the top here. I want it to be a PBR. I'm just going to call it SH for short for shader. We're going to call this pin table or pin board, whatever you want to call it. And then while this is selected, right click and create a new material based on this. And I'm just going to call this the same name except for having no SH. It's going to be matte or material, and we're good to go. So let's grab this and drag it into the prefab folder to have a prefab version of this. We can remove this one in the scene, and then I'm going to use the script that I created to generate these cubes. So I'm going to create an empty, call this grid generator, and then we're going to grab our scripts, there we go. Drag that in, and then I'm going to assign what I need there. So I'm going to assign the prefab of my cube. Let's make it 20 by 20, I think. One spacing should be fine, I think, based on the size of the cube. So I think that should be good. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to delete this generator script because actually I'll keep it in case I want to generate more. And then I'm just going to create a empty object here just to store all this stuff so it's out of the way. Let's call this level. I'm going to grab all my, I should have actually created in the script to rename these new game objects, so that would make some sort of sense. There we go. So we have our little level. So if I start the game, I should actually delete the original camera, not have two cameras in this world. Let's try that again. Oh, my camera offset is out of, yeah, so let me reset. Let me just reset my camera position and then do it again. 0, 0, 0. Let's pull the camera up a little bit. Push it back. Push it back. Drop it down a little bit again. I think it's way too far now. Where the hell am I? Where the hell? Oh, I need to move it like that. So with that, I'm just going to right click on my player script, say copy component, stop the game, right click and say paste component values so that I can have the new values, apply this to the prefab so I don't have to do it again. There we go. So we have a very simple camera move. You can see that the cubes are here, and now that we have the cubes, we can go ahead and assign the different I think they should be the right distance apart from each other. No, they do. Okay, so if you see this kind of shitty shadow quality here, let's quickly fix that. It's going to bug me and I'm not going to be focused. So I'm going to select my render pipeline. I'm going to go to quality. You can turn on HDR if you want. We'll be turning some of these settings on and off throughout the series. So cast shadows, that is right. We also want to cast those shadows. 1K should be fine. We're going to go to the shadow distance. Come on. 75 should be good. Let's make it 4 cascading shadows. Don't go crazy. You can even go 2, but 4 cascading shadows. It's also kind of got like an LOD system, so you'll see when we have 4 and how far away it goes down to the remaining amount of. And then we can also have soft shadows. Okay, so that should be that. Okay, so let's get going. Now that we have our little level, we have a light. We can, I don't know why they ever just position the light. Makes no difference where that light is in the world. Okay, I'm just going to rename this to PINTABLE example. Okay, so let's get started. So now what we're going to do is we are going to open up this material. We're going to just do the sorry about that, it's the rain outside. We're going to do this kind of like outline just to show you how quick and easy it is, and then we'll talk about like the actual movement of the object. So let's go to our shader, open it, just double click on the actual shader, not the material. I do that quite often and then I get really irritated with myself. So introduction to Shadergraph. This is what happens. It opens in the bottom right. You have what the result of your material will look like. If, like in this case, we're going to be using a cube, so I'm just going to switch over to a cube. If you hold down left mouse button and rotate, you can rotate around the object. Wheel will zoom in and out. So now we have kind of like, this is what my, and you can also see you've got custom meshes, so you can add a custom mesh if you have a model and you want to see what the skin shade or whatever it is that you're doing. Something that frustrated the crap out of me is you can move this around, but I try to keep scaling it down from the left. You've got to actually pull it up here and then grab it in the corner here and scale it up and down. So just, and then just put it back where it was. You can put it in the top here. I prefer it up there anyway. Okay, and then on the left here, these are what we call parameters or variables. If for those of you using Bolt or Code, these are parameters. So we're going to need one variable to start, but we'll do that later on when we have, because we have to do, that's the smallest amount of code we're going to have to do. So we're going to click on here, we're going to add 2 colors. So because we're going to create the cube first, and we're going to create, sorry, technically 3 colors actually. We're going to add the first color. This is going to be the, let's call this near color. And let's make the near color red. We're going to have the far color. So this is when the object is not near the player. This is the far color, and we're going to make that into a green. You can choose any color, and then we need the color that where the cube isn't glowing. So we're just going to make a standard. We're just going to call it black. It's that simple. So those are our 3 colors, and we're going to plug them directly into our albedo using a lerp. So we're going to use a lerp. We're going to plug into our albedo. Think of a lerp, when you're doing code, you can animate between this value and that value by just moving the slider. Notice how that works. So, and if I were to plug in my colors quickly, just to show you how that works. So we're going to use, let's just plug these 2 colors and just kind of show you, this isn't how it's going to look. We're going to break this off, but I just kind of want to show you how this works. So each of these values, if we slide them up, you'll start to see we go from red to green. So think of it that way. It's just, and for the, if when you're not animating it, think of this as the alpha channel of how to mix these 2 together. Okay, so we need a lerp, and what we're going to be lerping in here, we're going to be lerping our hold a second. We're going to be using something. This is why it's a bit of a hack. Off the time, we're going to search for a rounded rectangle. Hello. Oh, wait, maybe it doesn't like it being dragged from there. Rounded rectangle. You'll see that it's a little rectangle here. We're going to, and because the Unity's box is unwrapped with all the UVs on top of each other, we're going to project this shape that you're looking at onto each of the faces. We're going to use that as the alpha. We're going to use that as the alpha, and then we'll need a width and a height. So we'll need some sort of line thickness variable, and then a radius variable. That the radius is for this rounded corners effect. So if I move that around, notice how we can make it a full circle or just go back to a solid square. So we can do, so we're going to create a vector 1, call this line thickness. Let's set the line thickness to something like 0.2, I think might be enough. It's just this line's already too thick. So we're going to put that into the width and the height. Wow, okay. wrong direction. That's better. So let's make it like 0.98. Okay, let's go 0.95. So now we have that, and then we just need to create a new variable for the rounded. Let's call this rounded corners so that we know exactly what that does. Rounded corners, right now it's at 0.1, so if we just drag this and plug this directly into the radius, we're going to get a perfectly square like outline. So we're just going to put a small amount of rounded. That's not small amount. That's a small amount. Okay, so now that we have this, we have the alpha, and we can combine two colors together. Okay, so what are the colors that we're combining? We're going to be combining the, let's say, the near color. Let's try that again. And the black. And when we go into the, trying to make this nice and neat, when we go into the, notice how in the cube here, it's already, if the cube would update, which it doesn't want to, and we go back into the engine, notice how we have all these cubes with these little outlines. Again, it's a hack. The only way this is working, and if you wanted to use your own cube from something like Blender, you need to make sure all the UVs are on top of each other. They're all unwrapped on top of each other. So because all the shape is being projected onto each of these faces. Okay, so phase one done. We have some color. So just for the time being, we're going to create a group around this. Actually, let's duplicate it first. So Control D to duplicate, move it down here, and let's remove the near color and add the far color. Everything else remains the same, and we're just going to put groups around that. So select all of what you want to group, right click and say group selection. Let's call this far color. Select that one, group that together, call it near color, and we're at a position where we now have the two colors that we are going to interpolate together. So now we're going to need another lerp here, and we're going to tell it lerp from this color to that color based on something. We don't have what that is yet, but that's what we need. We need to interpolate between the near color and the far color based on something. So the color aspect is pretty much done. That is as simple as you can get. So let's take a little reprieve from the shader and let's talk about like adding post-processing to this. So what you do with that is just open up your scene, right click, go to volume and select a global volume for this. Should be fine. And we're going to create a new post-processing profile. We're just going to add a little bit of glow, so it's going to be bloom. And we need to actually make this, hold on, while we're at it, before we forget, let's apply the albedo color as well into the emission color, so we get a little bit of a glow from this. So when we add the glow, we can actually turn the intensity up and see what happens. Whoa, that's too much. But you can see it straight away, it's kind of glowing. So I think something like 0.75 should be okay. Let's go crazy. Let's just make it 1. Okay, so you got a lot of other settings here, and then obviously I just always like to add a vignette. Remember, when you add these post-processing, they're off by default. So when you tick something on and you move the slider, that's when it actually starts to, if I do that again, that's when it actually starts to work. So I'm just going to put the intensity up to something like too much, 0.5. Might even be too much there. You can also change the color of your vignette, so maybe 0.4 is good. But enough of that waffling. I'm getting distracted by all the post-processing stuff. And now we're going to go back into the shader, and we need to create a variable, and we're going to create a script. Let's just get that part out of the way, so we can play around with the cool stuff. So these, if you look at these parameters, I'm just going to close them so you can see the order they're in here is the order they'll show up. For example, I actually didn't even show you that. If I select the material, that's the order they show up when you select the material. So all of these here, like line thickness, is all accessible in the editor. Same thing as the rounded corners. Same thing as changing the color if I wanted to have blue instead and green, like that. maybe like an orangey color. Then you can change all of that stuff in the material and you're good to go. So those are exposed so that they're artist friendly. That's the intention for all of this. Okay, so now these are all in the correct order. We're going to add this one called, it's going to be a vector 3. I'm going to call this player position. So this is going to get the position of the player so we can actually tell it what to do when the player is nearby. Now, when you're coding, whether you're using bold, whether you're using code, this is not the name that you're going to call in code, so don't look at that. It's the reference down here. So at the bottom here, I'm just going to call it player. Keep it nice and short so I don't have to type it again. That is going to be the name we're going to call in code. Okay, so we have that. So let's go and do the actual code so we can see, because now that that variable is exposed here, we'll see it update when the player updates. So I'm going to quickly, because I did this back to front, I'm going to quickly go to my player and remove that line of code that I created for it. I don't like the way it, the idea, because if you want to add multiple objects to be affecting this thing, you shouldn't be putting it the way I did. Okay, let's remove that. And remove that. Okay, so now we're going to put this into a completely new script. So we're going to create a simple script, very simple. Again, you can do this in bold, exactly the same way I'm about to do it here. So we're going to right click, we're going to create a C# script. Let's call this player position. Okay, so now that we've created this player position script, I'm just going to assign it directly to the actual player. And I'm keeping it separate so that if I plan to assign it to any other objects, I can just drag the script instead of like dragging all that other nonsense with it. So we're going to open up the script and we're going to be doing this in the update. So we need to get a reference to the player and a reference to the material. So just for testing, I'm just going to make the material a serialized field. Just wait for it to catch up or not. If you have this issue, I shall show you how to fix it. Let me just wait to see if it actually wakes up. Okay, so if this kind of thing happens where Visual Studio Code doesn't work, just go back into Unity, let it save and recompile. Go to Edit, go to Preferences, and I find that if I just switch over to using open by file extension, go back to Visual Studio Code, and then make sure local packages is turned on. Just generate the file, clear it, and then just open up the script again one more time. Let it catch up, or catch a wake up, and let's try this again. Come on, I believe in you. That works. Let's try serialize. Oh well, I guess I'm typing all of it out. Serialized field, and it's going to be a reference to the material, so we're going to just call it material. It's not even showing up material. Interesting. It is giving me a lot of grief. Call it mat. And then we need another one for the player position. This one's just going to be private because I think I tagged my player as player, so I'm going to make this a transform. You're probably not going to struggle like I'm doing because now I have to type everything out. And we're going to have an onAwake function. So awake, that works. That's weird. So not all of it is completely broken. So player ref is equal to find come on. Okay, we're back again. I just figured out I had to do it again what I just showed. So find object by type. We're going to look for, I think it was called simple player controller. So that is the player that's in there. I'm going to make a reference, and it's a transform, so we got to go transform at the end just to get the transform aspect of the player. And then all we do in the update is every frame we update the material. Let's set vector. It's going to need, if you hover over it, it's going to require the name of the variable and the position of the player. So I'm going to quickly go back to my code. I called it, there it is, player position. So we're going to go in here, we're going to put quotation marks, put the name of the variable over here. We're just going to go transform dot position. Okay, so that's it for the script. Nothing much, quite basic. We're going to go back to the player, and then we're going to assign that material that we're using. So we are using this material here. We're going to go to shaders. We're going to grab the matte pinball, plug it into there. And I'm going to select the material so you can see the player position updating so that we know that that part of it is working. I like to do things in small chunks. Notice how those values are updating based on the player position. So that is working. So now we can continue with the shader aspect of it itself so we can get it working. So let's start a way of creating almost like a radius around the character that's going to affect the rest of the world. There are different ways to do this, and I do different ways for different things that I want to get out of it. So there's a really nice node called sphere mask. It does exactly what it suggests. So it's a black and white map based on a radius around the character in a three-dimensional sphere. So sphere mask is really good for that. We are going to use this along with our player position. Now the player position, this is where it can get really tricky. The player position goes into the center of the sphere mask. You're probably going to want to plug that into there as well, but I found that that does not work. So what we need in here is the actual object that this is the materials on, and the object's position needs to go in there. So that's what you want to do there. And then obviously we need to create two more variables. One is for the radius and one is for the hardness. So let's go ahead and create that. They just need to be vector ones. We call this one radius. I want to put like a default value of like 2 units. Then the next one is going to be the hardness. Think of hardness as the feather of how soft the fall off is going to be on that shader. So the higher the number, the harder it becomes. The lower number, the softer it becomes. So I want to leave it at 0 for now. Just plug that directly in there. And we now have our little controlling mask that's going to be used to control the effect that we're going to have on the shader, like changing the height of the objects, like whether they're squashed or whether they're standing up. And we're also going to use this to kind of change between these colors here. So we'll start by just showing you how the color works with this effect after we're done. Then we'll add the actual up and down movement. Okay, so all we care about here is the following. We are going to grab this. I'm going to put in a minus node, or 1 minus as they call it, and then I'm going to remove it just to show you what happens. We're going to do a 1 minus because I want to invert the colors of this mask. Okay, and then we're going to use this, and we're going to just to show you what it does, we're going to plug this directly into the lerp. Like that. I'm back, sorry about that. And let's try this out. Notice how you can already see the effect there, because that's where the character is. So let's try this out. The character falls. Notice how it's blue in the middle and yellow on the outside. We don't need our line thickness. We have our radius, how wide the sphere is. And notice how the hardness will make it very hard. So it's just either going to be yellow or it's going to be blue. But if I kind of feather it out, notice how it becomes softer. So that's what those two values do. And then when we move around, the color changes based on where the player is, which is good. So it's doing exactly what we want. I'm going to probably put the radius. I want to move these values up. Player position needs to be at the end, so I want to, because that's that's something I think Unity needs to look into, being able to expose variables so we can call it in code, but hide it in the editor like you do in code. So we don't, because once an artist sees this player position, they probably assume they should be able to do something with it, and I don't want them to do anything with that variable. I want that variable to be hidden to the artist, but accessible in the code. So let's make the radius something like 3 and minus. Let's leave it at 0 again for the hardness for now. Okay, we got color changing. Now let me show you what that 1 minus node does. So if I bypass that 1 minus node, remember it was the color was blue inside and yellow on the outside. Well, actually it's green, it's just the glow. And now is it the same? Hold on. Is this 1 minus node not actually doing anything here? I'm quite sure I put it in there for a reason. Okay, so that's the color. Let's just see. Okay, no, it doesn't seem to do anything. So for now, we're going to remove this 1 minus node. I don't know if it actually does anything to a mask. I never considered that. I normally use a 1 minus to just invert colors. And in the other videos, you'll see I use it. And you can actually clearly see why I use it in those cases. But if it doesn't do anything here, no point having unnecessary things. Okay, so what I want to do is, now that I have this, I don't want the entire cube to move or squash and stretch. I just want the top vertices. So if we look at our scene, I grab one of these cubes, I just want this top section to move up and down. So that's what I want to do. I don't want the whole thing to go like this. I just want the top section of the vertices to move up and down. So let's we need to create another mask. So this mask is going to go into a let's try that again. Multiply. So we're going to multiply two values together. We're going to multiply this along with another node. So now we need to get the world position. So we're going to create a position node. We're going to get the world position, and we're going to split this. We're going to split this because all I care about is the green channel, which is the Y, which is up in Unity. So I want to get the up vector in Unity, and I'm going to, there's multiple ways to do what I'm about to do, but I just find using a gradient allows a little more freedom. So I'm going to drag this out and type in sample gradient. Now, gradients aren't accessible by the artist or outside of the editor, so I don't even bother making a variable for that. I just click in here and tweak what I want inside of this shader here. So I want to make the left side black. I'm just going to move the white so that just about half of the sphere is in light and then the other half is in darkness. So let's make this like 30. Okay, so you can see what's going to happen here. All the vertices at the top in the world position will be affected, all the ones at the bottom. And when we multiply these together, we're basically adding the whites with the whites and the blacks with the blacks and the colors in there, and then we're just going to plug that in like that. Along with the two masks together, now we'll control the way the color works. In this case, the color works. Let's try that actually. I'm going to plug that back in to the there. Notice how, let me actually come to the end here so you can see it. Notice how, oh, the wrong end. That was funny. Notice how it kind of feathers, so you can see that there's color and then there's no color at the bottom. And that's exactly what I want to do. We can probably tweak this gradient a little bit, but that's exactly what I want to do. I want to control the amount of fall off for the movement of the object. Okay, so we're not going to use this for the color. It just looks, well, it looks cool actually, but we want to be able to not be using this mix node for the colors. So we're just going to use the standard ones. Okay, again, let's just double check that our far color, see our far color is being assigned here and not our near color. So let me just double check if that 1 minus doesn't do something again. So I'm going to put the 1 minus, this time I'm putting it after this. There we go. That looks better. And let's plug this in and see if we get the correct output for the color here. So this we're going to leave plugged in there, but we're just going to actually, but the 1 minus should have worked from the sphere mask. It really should have. So now the far color and the near color should be switched around. Let's see. Near color's blue, far color's yes. Okay. That feels better. Okay, let's leave that as that. I'm now waffling. So this section here, we're going to create a group and call this sphere around player position in the world. There we go. So we're just creating a little mask around the player in the world. And now we need to do the actual logic. So how are we going to move this object around? Apologies. So this is where we're going to create another lerp. So this is going to lerp between the current position and the small position, if that makes sense. So for the A, I want to leave it as this is what the position is, the original position. So we're going to use a position node, set it to object, and I'm going to plug that into A. So A means use the original scale of the object. So it's 1, 1, 1 at the moment. Then we're going to okay, so the next stage is to add what we want it to be when it's when we're not standing on it, basically. So we're going to duplicate this node. Again, we're going to split this because I want to only change the Y value. And then we're going to combine them again. It's like creating a new vector versus a encode, like a new vector 3. So that's what we're doing here. So that should be fine because we want to just adjust the green channel. And we're going to plug the output of this. Actually, we don't even need the alpha. We're just feeding the RGB values in there. There we go. So this is, let's comment this or put the group around this. Call this scale values. So what's nice about this is whatever you want to do can go in here. So if you want to, like we did with the color thing, so there's so many things we can do here to adjust. So this is going to go directly, needs to be object space to object space into the vertex position. Now the lerp is where the magic happens. So we're going to drag it from here. Ah, jeepers. So let me zoom in here and drag it across. It doesn't like to see, it doesn't see that little dot at all. Is it because it's an R? No, it's an out. I do find that it tends to have little moments where it forgets how to work. Okay, I'm going to break these quickly and then I'm going to plug the last one in first. No. Shadergraph is good, but it's not 100%. Oh, come on. Now what? I'm going to create a lerp directly from this one and then we'll plug the other two in. So lerp, time, bring the time up here, delete this lerp, plug this one into the top, plug this one into the bottom, and plug that into the vertex position. So we can move this up here just to bring it a little bit closer, but now we have choices. We can either change the color or we can just bring the sphere mask across into the color lerp here, but we're going to leave everything as it is for now just so that we can see how it works, if it's working, that sort of stuff. So let's see what happens, shall we? You can see it's already kind of semi-working there. There we go, and that's it. Boom, boom. And again, when we test it, we can go to the material, we can change the radius. So like I said, let's make the radius something like 3. And let's make the hardness like 1. Notice how there's no fall off, so only the blocks that are in the radius pop up and all the others stay down. We got this kind of very like tuk 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 kind of I think best way to kind of use my sounds on my mouth to explain it. And in there we got a little bit of a fall off. We can make it bigger or smaller depending on what we're trying to do. Notice how it's flat at the bottom because we didn't move the vertices, but we have moved the vertices up based on whether it's near or far. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the shader tutorial. I hope this has been helpful or been interesting or anything like that. Just comment if there's anything else you don't understand or if you would like to know more about. But that's pretty much the extent of this video. So we got it working, we got it moving around, we got it animating. Again, the power of this is there's so much you can do with this. Other than just this little kind of pin cushion, not pin cushion, like this pin table or pin board kind of effect, you can do a lot of really cool things with this. So thank you so much for watching, and till I see you next time, be safe.